go here. So, good evening, members of council. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee meeting to order. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the agenda for the May 21st, 2013 regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adopted. Any additions to the agenda? There being none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any pecuniary interest they need to disclose at this time? Can that be so noted in the minutes, please? Next item, new business. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Ribiak, that the information from Sylvia Jones, Member of Provincial Parliament, regarding the Aggregate Recycling Promotion Act be received, and that staff be directed to develop a policy regarding the use of recycled aggregate in the town of Pelham infrastructure projects. Any discussion regarding this particular policy?
Pretty self-explanatory.
And that's enough council direction. Okay. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? No motion carried. We look forward to that policy coming forward. How do you want to do this? It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor King, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive issue sheet, boards, commissions, and committees by council selection of council members policy, and that the policy be referred to staff for review and revision for presentation at the next P&P committee meeting scheduled for June 17th. Discussion? There being none, I call... Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor.
That's okay.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor, with a little bit of latitude, it's not specifically about this, but about how we're approaching this policy review, and I wondered if this would be an opportune time to put this forward, my thoughts forward on this. And if
Go
I
ahead,
may.
try me.
Okay. When I
Try
look
us
at the policies that have been brought forward to us from staff today for look-see, and the recommendations that are put forth on each summary report, it appears to me that not a whole lot is being accomplished by approaching things the way we're approaching them at this point. So I would put forward two particular suggestions on how we might modify how we're doing this. One would be that I think it would be more helpful if, when an issue is brought forward to us, that staff would offer suggestions on where the issue with the policy is and how it might be modified to bring it in line with best practices. The other alternative, Mr. Mayor, would be for us to not just simply refer the policy matter back to staff, bolus, but that we as a council would debate the policy, whether it's appropriate to amend it, and what type of amendments we would see as being important to be encased within the new policy, so that when staff then creates the new policy, they would bring it back with those items that this council felt were important encased within the policy. Because what we're basically doing is just receiving a recommendation from staff that the policy needs to be amended, and we've referred back to staff to be amended. So what I'm suggesting is that perhaps council needs to be a little bit more involved in the process, so that if we get, for example, a recommendation that the boards, commissions, and committees' policy be amended, either A, staff at the same time as they bring this forward will bring forward a series of recommendations that we consider, or we as council will have thought about this ahead of time, ahead of getting here, and have an open discussion about the types of things that we would like to see incorporated within that policy that staff can then put forward at our next policy meeting. It just would seem to me to be a more productive type of discussion that we would have. I put that up for my colleagues to discuss.
I'm going to respond. Certainly that's, especially the second point that you raised, that's available at any one of these junctures. So, for example, the previous motion regarding aggregate policies, council could have said, okay, these are the types of things that we want to see in it, and that's the intention. In the case of this particular policy, I think it was the intention that would come forward, but there were some items that staff couldn't get to this one. I don't know if the CAO wants to comment on that, but Mr. CAO, that is the type of direction that staff's looking for, is it not?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and to the councillor's first point, which was, I guess, giving direction or having staff look at it ahead of time, is that correct?
Well, if, for example, staff identified a particular policy that they felt was outdated,
Yeah.
then it would probably be somewhat helpful in their issue summary report to point out those areas where it's
Yeah.
outmoded
So-
or where it needs modification.
So that wasn't specifically, I'll say, done in this case, and I'm just looking for the CO's comment on what are the items that you think need to be, I notice there's a number of committees here that are no longer around, the Hydroelectric Commission, Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the town's no longer involved in that. So that's the kind of thing that you would have liked to have seen in the summary sheet.
Right.
Mr. CAO, can you comment on that piece?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If there's a policy that, for example, you'll notice recognition of staff, 25 years of service. That policy is from our point of view, fine. It needs to remain as policy, but it does require a slight correction to make sure that it's numbered properly within the context of the policy manual. So that recommendation is made. It's pretty straightforward. If there's other policy that is a little more complex and involves a little bit more political policy making, then to have the desires of council or the direction council would like to go indicated to staff when it's referred back to us is extremely helpful. It helps us develop a policy in the context of what council's wishes are. And in the sort of immediate short-term issue that's affecting staff at this point is, as you're aware, we are council's directed that we adopt the creative problem-solving process. So we're looking at how we adopt that in the context of policy development. And the way that we're looking at it is that council will recall we passed a policy that used that format. We are now working with the Burke Group to redo our human resource policies as council's directed, and what you'll see when we come forward with those policies is going to be that format reflected in the suite of policies that council's requested. So from that point on, any policy revisions, we would like to use that format rather than coming back and amending existing policies and then having to come back and rewrite them to put them back in the creative problem-solving context. So that's one of the reasons why boards, commission, and committees, and that is not specifically being looked at now. We're waiting, we're sort of holding off and saying, okay, well, if we're going to rewrite this, let's rewrite it in the format that council's directed us to adopt.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, and you said you wanted some feedback from colleagues. Do any colleagues around the table wish to comment? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that there's nothing wrong and a whole lot right with plucking low-hanging fruit, which I think this is probably a good example of. These are policies which are clearly different in form than what we do, but it's really easy for us, as in this case, to look at what we're doing and suggest that that's the policy that we want. Renumbering is a housekeeping item. We still have to do that. I think it's probably we need to find some point in time in which to tackle those, and I guess this is as good a time as any. So I'm not that bothered by seeing a number of policies here that have very minor changes associated with them, and we can deal with them and get through them pretty quickly. I am looking forward, though, as my colleague I think is, to some of the meatier stuff that we are concerned with, and particularly if we take the time as we are this evening on lovely summer weather, away from other things we could be doing, to spend our time. This would be a good time, I think, to get into the meatier stuff and really make it worth a while to tackle it. But I certainly don't argue with the need to also deal with the stuff that needs to get through on a kind of a housekeeping basis.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, the CEO wants to comment. I'm going to say council made the determination that the first policies it would look at would be the council policies, which made sense to us at that time. So I think this is nearly the end of the council policies. So there's just a few more outliners. And actually, I'm told from the clerk some were discovered in this is the issue that we've had with these binders and the numbering and all this, which is a housekeeping issue, but is also important because some were in one binder and some were in another, and the twain are meeting tonight. You know, I think once we're done the council piece, we move on to some of the departments. I can't recall whether it's development services, I think is the next department, is that correct? Pardon?
I think it's corporate services.
Corporate services is the next department or area in the policy binder. So we look forward to that. Mr. CEO, did I steal your thunder?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I just, yeah, that's the point, is that we started at the council section of the policy manual because the first policy of council was a policy to establish policy, so it made sort of logical sense. And please, no offense to council, but the meatier stuff is yet to come, like snow removal policies and accounting procedures and all this fun stuff, but it's in the next several chapters of our manual, so.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just to complete that thought, I do appreciate that we are getting into this thing and getting it done. You know, we've dealt with a number of these so far. As long as we're persistent and keep this going, then I'm sure we're going to get it all out of the way. And it is important to do, I do agree.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting how time piles up on these policies. This one from 97, you know, then the Chamber of Commerce was called the Greater Welland Chamber of Commerce. It was representative to the Welland County General Hospital and the Welland Port Colborne Airport Commission. So things do change, and no doubt there's a number of other agencies, boards, and commissions to which we appoint. Anything further on, Councillor Kersey, you wanted to hear from colleagues, and you've heard from some of us around the table. Anything
That's
further?
fine. Okay, so we should deal with specific, if we have any particular thoughts on each one, we should do it as we bring them up.
I think that was the understanding on that.
Come to us, then we
Okay.
can change it as we need to.
Councillor Kersey, on this
So
particular.
with respect to this one, I think something that should be incorporated into the policy is that prior to appointment, we demand this on other committees when we ask people to serve from the community, that they are qualified and interested. So maybe intuitive, but it doesn't say that. We want to appoint people from council to various committees and boards who, A, have an interest in that particular area, and B, have some qualifications to sit in that area.
So Councillor, this policy is for members of council.
I understand
To
that.
sit on those, and you
I
want
understand.
to recommend that, not saying that you shouldn't, but that they should be qualified. What does that mean? Could you just elaborate a little bit, and then we'll
Well, I
see if there's an
mean-
amendment or a motion?
Well, okay, let's start with interest. So, for example, if somebody would sit on the airport commission, you don't want to put somebody on that commission who has absolutely no interest in aeronautics, no understanding of financial operations. So I would think you want somebody there who's interested in aeronautics and the operation of the airport, but also has some understanding of operation of a business. Because it is a business, and it functions as a business, and it's a valuable asset. So you want somebody who's qualified to sit on that, as opposed to somebody who, Councilor Ribbiak, I'm not looking at you when I'm making these comments. I'm just making general comments.
Yeah.
Similarly, someone who sits on the library board, not everybody has an interest to sit on the library board. So someone who has an interest in library function in the town, and again, I would argue that it's a business, and so there's some business acumen that would be important to at least discuss and point out to the person who's going to sit there, so that they know what they're getting into before they get into it.
Okay. So you would want to make a direction to staff, include in the policy, that
Well, I'm
council,
putting it out
like-
for discussion with my colleagues,
all right.
because that's what we're supposed to be discussing here. So-
Okay. Councillor Papp, you wanted to comment
Well,
earlier.
yeah,
Do you want
I'm-
to comment on this?
I'm generally in agreement with Councilor Kersey, except I'm waiting for it to come back, because quite honestly, this page with the board's commission, it's redundant. There's nothing there that's relevant to how we operate now. So the question is, do we do that now for the matter of protocol, do we give that input at this given point, right?
That's the point that I'm
That's,
trying
I
to
think that's,
discuss.
if that's what you're trying to say, or do we wait till you come back on the 17th with a proposed draft of how we're gonna appoint, how council should be appointing its members to these various committees, because it's nothing to do with the general public, it's about us in itself, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I can wait. I mean, there's some things that you know, there's some practices in the past that we've done, and there's others that, you know, who wants to sit on what committee? I mean, and that needs a thorough discussion, you know, how do you do it? The new council coming in a year or so from now, how is that gonna be handled? Like, I wanna sit on the airport commission, you wanna sit on the library, you know, Richie. So I will wait for that, because at this point, I don't really wanna get into that kind of detail at this stage.
Okay.
But I can see the fact is, the critical point is that we have the ability to give our direction and how we wish to see these things shaped for our particular.
They're supposed to be our policy.
Our responsibilities, correct, because as directors of the corporation, we're ultimately held accountable for it. So I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. Others, Councilor Rubiak, I saw your hand.
Thank you. Yes, my inclination was to make comment with regard to my colleague Councillor Kersey's proposition, but having heard Councillor Papp, and I think my understanding is that we want to reserve some of the pointed
Yeah,
direction for when a draft comes forward. I may want to reserve my comments to that time rather than do it now and then go forward with it.
Or you could do it now, so.
Or I could do it now, but if I, well, then let me go ahead. What I heard Councillor Kersey say is that members of committees ought to be selected on the basis of interest and qualification. Interest for sure, and I would say that the interest that all councillors have is the interest in promoting the interests of the town, and that's why we would be on those committees. With respect to qualification, I always have difficulty with the question of representatives being selected on the basis of qualification to begin with. We have a representative democracy. People are expected to elect us from amongst themselves, and it's not done with a view to their qualifications. One doesn't run for office on the basis of, you know, I was an engineer or I was a pilot, but rather I offer you myself, my judgment, my character to speak on all sorts of things. So really, I wonder whether the question of qualification in something specific like aeronautics is really appropriate in terms of deciding these things. Again, I point out that maybe the time to have this discussion is when we're into the pointed stuff, but I did want to respond to the idea of qualifications. I think it's always useful to have those qualifications, but we don't get elected on the basis of those specific qualifications. And if we're not, and we don't have somebody qualified, does that mean that we don't fulfill the position on a committee because of that? I'm not sure that that's possible.
I mean, I don't want to be on it committee.
Okay, thank you. Just, anyone else? Just the comment about qualifications, and maybe something that we don't do, I'll say officially, is when members are appointed to various agencies, boards, and commissions on behalf of council, does there need to be some sort of training? So that Councilor Rubiak makes the point, if someone isn't specifically qualified on aeronautics, landing planes or whatever it is, but you need to know that because you need to know about runways, etc. So what type of training should be provided, etc. So, you know, maybe that's something that can be included as well into the policy, and orientation for each member once they're appointed. So in the case of Councillor Papp on the Chamber of Commerce, well, he sat on it for a number of years. He can,
10 years.
you know, he doesn't need an orientation. Yourself, sir, as a member of the PBA, you didn't, you know, you started the PBA, so you don't need the orientation. But in other cases, if you put me on the airport commission, well, maybe I need some sort of orientation on that commission. So maybe that's something else that can be included in the policy when it comes back, and it mirrors and talks about qualifications. The other side of that is to bring somebody up to speed, and that is with an orientation process. Others? Percy, anything further on this?
Nope. At least we had a discussion.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the question, and Mr. CEO, I guess staff will take these points in consideration. Is that what you're writing to me, Madam Clerk? That these points will be considered when the policy is being developed? So it's good to
That's
have the
all we-
discussion?
Yep.
Anything further, Mr. CEO? No? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And we look forward to that coming forward at our next PNP meeting. Thank you, Councillor, for that. The next item has been moved by Councillor Kirsty, seconded by Councillor King, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet appointment of the acting mayor policy and recommend to council that the policy be rescinded. Discussion? Councillor?
A couple of points, Mr. Mayor, if I may. If we are rescinding this policy, will we not have an acting mayor or deputy mayor going forward? And or will we replace it with an alternate policy more reflective of the way we've conducted business at least since I've been on council? And I guess
I'm gonna ask the clerk to respond. I thought there was something in here about the procedure bylaw. Madam Clerk, can you respond to the councillor's question, please?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, the Municipal Act does provide for the appointment of a deputy mayor. There has been some discussion throughout the term that perhaps not all members of council wish to sit as a deputy mayor, so we felt that that might be a discussion that could take place at, during the caucus meetings of a council-elect as to how they wish to appoint the deputy mayor, which is the provision under the Municipal Act. There is a provision in our procedural bylaw to allow for the deputy mayor and what the deputy mayor's responsibilities would be. However, by the actual policy that's in place right now hasn't been followed for the past number of terms because each member of council was given the opportunity to sit as the deputy mayor. So we felt that it would be better reflected and decided upon by each council-elect.
Councillor Papp?
And if I may add, and help me, Madam Clerk, that was actual resolution of council to do the rotating mayorship, deputy mayorship at the time, was it not?
Yes, it was.
I believe it was,
Yeah.
yes.
So in effect, I like your comment that maybe it's time to revisit that. That's fine at the time that we did that, and Councilor Durley and I, back then, no, we actually started the 2006, but the whole idea, the whole idea is there another way of doing it? I'm open to suggestions. If people are uncomfortable with that aspect to it, then let's look at bringing something back that's much more, but again, you're right, it would have to be something with the next term. But if it's a new council, they could turn around and say, we don't like that, we're just gonna go with the current act and we'll just appoint a deputy mayor. So I like, it's necessary for us to review this, because you're right, there are some people that have indicated that they're uncomfortable doing that kind of rotation. I'll be happy to take it all over.
You'd be happy to what? Sorry, I missed that.
I just wanna make sure you're paying,
I missed the last bit.
I'll be the deputy mayor.
Oh,
Your pay's gonna double.
deputy.
And pay's gonna double though. Okay, that's good. So
I
just
think,
Madam-
I think in essence, I'm gonna say, okay, go ahead, Councillor.
No,
You had a
just
question.
quickly, so we in effect would have to rescind that through you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Clerk, right? We'd have to rescind that resolution, right? Was that incorporated into a bylaw? I can't recall. The appointment of the rotating deputy mayor, or was it just a?
Do you know the answer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we pass a new bylaw each term.
Right.
Appointing, and again,
Right.
it's done through the caucus meetings and through the council-elect as to who will participate in that, how long the terms will be, and what the order will be.
Thank you very much.
Council will recall that actually we're on our third deputy mayor bylaw this term.
Right.
The reason for that is because of the resignation of our former colleague, Councillor
Right.
Banowitz. So in essence, we followed most of this policy in terms of the inaugural meeting, and we approved the bylaw then. Then, because our former colleague resigned, we had to revise the bylaw again, and I think you took over the
balance of her term.
deputy mayorship at that time for the
didn't
balance
get
of
any
that
extra money for it,
of that piece. And then, once our new colleague was welcomed to the table, we revised the policy, the bylaw again. So The recommendation before us is to rescind this bylaw, and I just want to say, others, what do other municipalities do? Other municipalities, I don't know that would work here because there's a discrepancy between the wards, but some say the deputy, especially in a no ward system, when there's no wards, they say the deputy mayor is automatically the one that gets the most votes,
That's the way it works.
right? That's a policy that they follow. Others do rotate it around. I know the city of Welland, they have wards, but they rotate it around as well.
Others elect just one from amongst themselves.
Others just elect from among themselves.
Yep.
Okay, so there are different options here. I would suggest, you know, if you're thinking about it, we rescind it, and when you say, well, what do you do to a new council coming in? Really, the policy could be amended to simply say, it shall be the policy of the corporation to appoint an acting mayor or deputy mayor, I guess is the term, by bylaw, which we do, at the inaugural meeting, who will act from, so it could be an a deputy mayor or mayors sort of thing, with the idea that it could be rotating, or somehow include language here to say that that position could be a rotating position among councillors for those that wish, something like that. So that could be considered. So right now, the motion is to rescind. I'm at the will of committee. Councillor Papp, you've already spoken. I'm going to go with your
Oh, no.
colleague, Councillor
Go right
Ribbiak,
ahead.
and then Councillor Papp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for information, please. If we do rescind it, I'm not sure, does that leave us with a void in this area? As I understand it, we have a procedural bylaw that actually fills that need, so rescinding it doesn't leave us high and dry. Okay.
Okay, can you comment on that, whether if we rescind it, whether there's a void?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As briefly outlined in the issue sheet, the Municipal Act does provide for the deputy mayor, as does our procedural bylaw. So the policy itself, a policy cannot override legislation, of course. So it is, unless the CEO has something additional to add.
Okay, so I was mistaken, I apologize. Does provide for an acting mayor, saying what, the council shall appoint an acting mayor?
Section. Should have said.
Please don't pull a book out, oh my goodness.
We can continue discussion.
No, we can't.
Okay.
You have to hear this.
Councillor Papp, you want to add anything further, or is that your point?
No, we have something in place as it currently stands, and we'll leave that, and if we wish to change it, that could be changed at the will of the new council, whoever they decide, if they want to carry on with that, or go to, as you say, straight out of the municipal act and just appoint a deputy, or come up with a combination of both, I don't know.
Okay. Council fine with that?
So, okay, sorry.
Doesn't look like we need the answer.
Okay.
So are we ready for the question?
Yep.
So we rescind the bylaw? It sounds like the municipal act does provide for it, as is a procedure bylaw. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durling, seconded by Councillor King, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet, Service Club support, and recommend to Council that policy R19 be maintained and renumbered in accordance with the current policy index. Discussion? Councillor Kersey?
I pose this question without prejudice. I just wonder whether it's necessary again to have a special policy with respect to the service clubs. We don't have a special policy with respect to Pelham Cares. They have to apply for the grants each year. I would presume the service club, if they need special treatment, have to apply as well and come before council for either an in-kind service or money. You know, vis-à-vis, we had an application for money towards a new sign. So I'm not quite sure why we have a policy that provides special recognition to the service clubs.
Thank you. Can someone answer that? Ms. Van Ravensway? don't get it. You're pointing this, I'm sorry.
To you, Mr. Mayor. This specific service club policy was initiated years ago, and it basically covered use of facilities up to a $2,000 limit. So, for instance, for any special events they hold in our facilities, or in our parks, Fenwick Lions Club, Centennial Park for, you know, the upcoming carnival, Oktoberfest, so forth. Basically, they would book the facilities that they required, and then they would be up to a limit of $2,000 of the actual cost, the fee that it would be anyone else to pay for. Or the Kinsman Club with regard to the Old Town Hall and their meetings, and the Fontell Lions Club, they use their $2,000 for the maintenance of the ball diamond, which if we didn't have use of their ball diamond, we would have to be providing additional diamonds. And that's what the policy was for. Anything above $2,000, they actually pay for.
Okay, thank you. Counselor?
I just wonder if there are not other groups in town that we provide the same in-kind services for that aren't necessarily encapsulated within a policy of council.
Any answers for that? I mean,
Speak to
Ms. Pupel?
the type of in-kind service that we provide to the Pelham Art Festival is done through the permissive grant, but they're not a service organization, which means they don't fall under that policy, but they do come forward at the permissive grant application time to ask for funding towards the rental of the arena for their art festival.
Okay, thank you. Nor have we received any requests for others to follow
I
this
have
policy?
not received any other requests,
Okay.
except for the sign, which we had a meeting with the community service, and they will be coming to the 2014 budget open house.
Okay, thank you. Counselor?
That's fine.
All right, thank you. Counselor Papp, did you,
No, I think you're gonna, maintain it, and as I was saying to the CEO, you're gonna be reviewing this as part of the permissive grants, just say reconsideration.
Yeah.
So at that time, if we need to tweak it or change it around so that it's much more encompassing and engaging, let's do it then. Because there's several components, I can see where you're going with, that could be, you know, you put dollar amounts in, I don't want to get specific, it may not be dollar amounts, you could expand that depending on where you take it. So I like to leave it, and then when we come back,
even, I agree with you, Counselor, even specifically number 4, we've
Right.
dealt with now
we dealt with that.
under, we're suggesting it should be with the budget process, and the second
Yeah,
should
and
be
you just-
the
yeah,
in-kind process
exactly.
with the policy that we just dealt with last meeting, so.
Exactly.
So the recommendation is to maintain it. You're suggesting that we, maintain it now, but review it when? When can that review occur, Mr. CEO?
You're already doing it.
It's under, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, it's underway, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So really, it's understood that we maintain it at this time.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else for this? Councilor Rivak?
I think we'll have the opportunity to discuss this further when it comes back. I think there's a lot
more
that we need to talk about, and when it comes back, I think there's time to do it,
Okay.
in my view.
Are we comfortable with the recommendation? So the parts of this are, there's really a lot in this policy, so parts of it will come back to us, but, and then the basis of the $2,000 grant, et cetera, will that come back to us as well? Mr. CEO, there's different parts of this policy. When can we anticipate? You're saying it's ongoing. Can you give us some timing, please?
Not specific timing at this point. I believe that it will come out, it'll start to come up again as you get into the corporate services policies. So the other part of it as well is the new format that we'll be looking at. So I think it's just, I can't give you an exact time when this is going to come back unless you say you want it back within a specific period of time.
I think it'd be important to come back before the budget.
Oh, I would anticipate it as to be resolved before the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. That's clearer now. Anyone else?
No.
We're fine? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next one we dealt with recently, so this one is to renumber. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Policy and Priorities Committee received the issue sheet, recognition of staff, 25 years of service, and recommend to Council that policy P201-01 be maintained. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding permissive grants and recommend to Council that Policy Council/21 be rescinded as the grant application process is governed through the Corporate Services Policy P300-02, grant applications. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that this regular meeting of the Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting, being the Committee of the Whole, scheduled for Monday, June 3rd, 2013, unless sooner called by the Mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.